Hey guys, Pete Ramsey here with Kelley McKay. As we come together once again, we're going to start talking some HVAC business from the tech level all the way up to the exec level, from tech to HVAC, from tech to exec. How does that sound?
Hey, I
So,
like that title. That's a
yeah.
good ring to it.
All right. Yeah. So what are we going to talk about today, Kelley?
So I'll start by talking about a compressor change out that kicked my tail. I was on Sam's Club. You know Sam's Club? Do you have Sam's Club? Or I
Yep.
mean, does
Yeah, we had
Florida
some,
have Sam's Club like when you lived in Florida? Or
you know,
where's your base at? Like when in
I'm
the
based,
States?
yeah, I'm incorporated in Florida, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's Sam's in Florida, North Carolina, all up the East Coast
Okay.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, I know some places they have different things going on. Like we didn't have Costco here till just like I don't know, maybe five,
Costco,
6 years ago.
BJ's. Yeah.
Yeah. So Sam's, um, we were replacing a compressor on Sam's, and we are trying to get it wrapped up, and it was getting dark, and it was cold, extremely cold. And the main guy who traveled from state to state throughout the Midwest to take care of these Sam's, he would leave the compressor change outs for us because he
Okay.
didn't want to do them
Right.
because they sucked.
Yeah.
And they're like, I want to say, I think they were like 10-ton compressors on average. Typically, that's what they were. Just one big, great big compressor, not just one stage.
Yeah.
And we always installed those big filter dryers that with the replaceable dryer on it that you can
Yeah.
unbolt, you know.
Yeah, with a bolt in. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was freezing cold, and I was in my coveralls, and I had like my whole face covered and everything, but I had to get this weld, and it's like inch and an eighth line, so you really had to heat it up. And
Yeah.
so I was all tucked up inside the unit, and my hands went numb because I was so cold.
Oh yeah.
And I burnt the living crap out of my hand because it probably had to burn for like 4 seconds before I could
So
even
you
feel it.
realize it.
Yeah, so that was misery, and we got it wrapped up and we got it going, but it was probably 10, 11 o'clock. I don't know why. I think we got started late that night, and that's why it went so long, because they didn't normally take that long. It was more like I don't know if it's an emergency deal or what. I just don't remember. But I remember wrapping my hand for, I don't know, the next week. I would wrap it because it was burned so bad. It was like the
Yeah.
whole web part of my hand was just
Ouch.
toast.
I
And
think. I mean,
I
you
kept
yeah.
it wrapped. I kept it wrapped and I kept it wrapped, and it just wouldn't heal. So I realized, man, I gotta take this wrap off here so it can actually heal. And then within a couple of days, it finally scabbed over. But
Right.
that was rough. That was a rough.
I was gonna say,
Just
yeah,
getting burnt. No.
you hadn't been in the business long enough. You hadn't been burnt. My thing was, you know how you'd raise the suction line, and then you reach over to raise it and lay your arm right on what you just.
Every time, dude, I
You
would
did
burn
that.
my face all the time because
No, I didn't
you
do my
know
face,
your
but
eyes your eyes are the best leak detector. And so I would always get my mirror, wrap it around
right,
there, and I'd be going like this until I
right.
touch my face. I can't tell you how many times I burn my face. I know it sounds stupid, but
So I got one too, on a commercial job. We used to do, I did refrigeration, and I can't remember what it was. It must have been a walk-in cooler. It was at the mall, and you go up on the roof, and then, you go across the roof, and then there was like, you had to go on a ladder to get to the next roof. It was one of those deals. And so it was one of those little Copeland semi-hermetic compressors, So we got it all tied up on the rope. And those ropes where the diameter is a little bit too small. It was one of those ropes for whatever reason. And my lead technician, or my junior technician, and I, we're pulling this thing up, and it caught the lip, right? That the flashing on the roof, and it caught that and pulled out and went to drop. And so we're holding the rope as the rope's running, and it's burning your hands.
oh my god.
Oh, it was terrible. I let go because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it just went, just go pounding into the roof down there, right below, which was stupid. And my my tech dug in. He said, "Get it, get it, get it. I got it." And I realized I had lost the callus on my hands. He still had his, but I spent so much time in the office, I didn't have that same callus that I used to.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was one. But we used to do a lot of that. Like we started off with refrigeration, when I started my business, and these big, 25 horsepower semi hermetics, and same thing. They call us to change those. Now, maintenance guys, they do all the easy stuff. They call us in for stuff like that. You brought back some good memories there. But the cold, I hate the cold. I don't know how
Yeah,
you.
and I mean, we both got a bunch of stories with different compressors. I changed a compressor out one time and rewired it wrong, and just could not figure out what the hell. It just wouldn't start. And I wound up changing that compressor and rewiring it wrong again. But I double checked, triple checked my wiring. I just missed something. Well, finally,
Yeah.
after I replaced it the second time, I figured it out and got it fixed and up and running. So just mistakes like that, I can just tell you, like I've done it all, man. I've
And
had, lungs full of phosgene, you know.
yeah, well, me too. That's some good stuff, smelling stuff. No, you reminded
Yeah.
me, that same tech with the rope. I had left him alone, and it was how when on those semi hermetics they would have like these 9 brass studs to go into the windings, and you had these plates that, depending on how you put them together, was what was how the voltage that was applied. On a 3-phase system, and I forget. I think it was like 575 volts or something like that. But anyway, he got it wrong. They threw power to it, blew the compressor up, brand new, and
Hmm.
we had to take it back. And of course, they weren't going to take it, so I had to eat it. And he was going to quit. He wanted to quit. He says, "Look, I'm sorry, I'm leaving." He just felt so bad,
Yeah.
and and um, and that's tough because I mean, it's bad enough when you do it to yourself, but when you do it to somebody else, if you're a conscientious person, uh, that was kind of tough. And I said, "Don't
We
worry
would
about it."
never we would have zero techs in the industry if
Right.
everybody just quit every time they burned a motor up or a
What
compressor,
and how many
because
times
it
did you,
happens all the time as you're learning.
as you're learning, that's what I was going to say. I remember when I was really early, I was just pulling filters. I pull the blower door off, and it's just sucking outside air, and blower sitting there running. I'm changing my filters, taking my time, and the motor goes out on overload. And I reached over, touched the motor. It was hot, and I was laughing. I said, "This thing's actually failing right in front of me. What a coincidence!" I didn't know that by pulling the door off, it would speed up the motor because it didn't have that draw through the return and overload it
Yeah.
that way. I didn't know.
Yeah. No, you don't know things like that. And you make simple mistakes too, like, you're on an air handler and you just go grab a regular 120-volt blower and you don't double or triple check it, and you wind up, frying that brand new motor because you hooked it up to the wrong voltage. Like, if you haven't made these kind of mistakes, well, good for you.
Yeah.
But for me, I made lots of those mistakes, and that was just part of learning. So, and eventually you get to where you make less. It's not that you never make mistakes, but you make less.
I think it
So,
makes you a better boss though when you start hiring
yeah,
people.
sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there has to be, everybody wants, like, the people, a lot of, not necessarily the people I work with, but I talk to a lot of business owners, and a lot of people, they're like, when I find that person to come work for me, right? And they're looking for that A plus, rock star tech who knows the tech side. Um,
Yeah.
and the thing is that in order for that person to get to that point, they had to make a lot of mistakes, just like as the owner or as the leader of your organization. You weren't that good when you first started. And so you have to have, you know, empathy and you have to have patience with people.
You
Um,
do, but you have to. I was working for, this is one of my last jobs before I broke off on my own. Actually, it was 3 before. So it was a jewelry store, service merchandise, I believe the name of it. we're out on the job site and I was sent to do the startup. So I'm up on the rooftop on the condenser, the blower's downstairs. And back then we had those radios. Remember the handheld 800 megahertz? And
Like
so,
walkie,
what was it?
yeah, kind of like walkies.
Yeah, they're like
Walkie
walkie talkies, but these the ones that we go, real long distance. So
Yeah.
John, I don't want to say his last name. No, he's probably not even with us anymore because he was pretty old back then. John Eagle was his name. So he was the head of the installation department of the company where I worked. He was a really nice guy. I remember he always wore the gold necklace with the eagle on there because John Eagle, whatever. And
Yeah.
so we went to start everything up, and my pressures kick on, and I've got a really low suction pressure and superheat. And so I radio John. I said, "Hey, can you check the blower, make sure it's running right? Check the rotation on that because it was a 3-phase motor." He goes, "Yeah, everything's right here." I said, "Are the filters blocked up or anything?" No, everything was good. And I'm checking. And I had to call help. I said, I don't know what's wrong with it. And and the lead technician would have been the equivalent of a service manager if they had one. He comes in, looks at it, walks right downstairs, reverses rotation on the blower motor, and it was fine. I looked like an idiot, but I never forget. This was like the second or third time that this kind of stuff had happened to me, where I trusted somebody else that they knew what they were doing,
Right.
and that they checked it, so it must be okay. And so I changed my
Yeah,
attitude on that. No offense, let's just double check. You check mine, I'll check yours. Cool.
absolutely. This is actually something that, new technicians or technicians I mean, a new technician, I mean, that could be somebody who's been doing it for 5 years. There's still a ton that they don't know in 5 years. There's still a ton that they haven't seen in 5 years. And so anytime I was, for years, I was the go-to for questions. I was the first contact, and so they would give me a call and I would be like, okay, what's your superheat? What's your subcoolant? Did you check the filter? What's the temperature drop? What's the temperature rise? Whatever. What's the amps? What's, all these things.
Right.
And half the time they'd be, oh, well, I already checked that. I'm like, okay, well, let's check it again. Because there would be times where they would give me two pieces of information that just cannot coexist.
It's not possible. Yeah.
It's not possible.
Yeah.
You can't have this without and have this over here, right? So it's like telling me you've got a 20-degree temperature drop, but your blower motor's not running. That's impossible. So I would always have to tell them to do it again. And as long as they listened, we would figure it out, most of the time. But sometimes they would want to argue and not do it. And those are the people who didn't wind up lasting, with my company. So
yeah, I tell the story all the time. I tell the story all the way to all the time, just this one little piece. We had what's called an FTC, a field technical consultant, when I was at Lennox, after I sold my business and everything. And we got kind of friendly. His name was Jeff. And that was his pet peeve. Whenever he would call and they'd ask for technical support, and he would ask, "What is your suction pressure? What is your head pressure? What is this?"
Yeah.
And he said that whenever they would say, "Oh, it's good," or "It's fine," he would respond this way. He says, "Well, I've got the gauges I'm looking at, and there's all these numbers on there, but good and fine are not on my gauges. What is your suction pressure?" Right?
Yeah, I like that. Good and
I love
fine.
that. Yeah. Not on here. And so, yeah. But right to what you were saying. But no, man.
So yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's a lot of times when you have somebody who wants to like speed through their calls. I mean, this is what I experienced. If you had somebody on your team who wanted to speed through their calls, was always worried about just getting to the next call or going home, then I would find that they would just stop calling me. Or if, and then once the operations manager took over, they would just say, "Oh, well, I did this and this and this, and it was working fine when I left." even though it
Oh
broke
gosh.
down 2 hours later,
Yeah.
because they didn't want to call me because they knew, or they didn't want to call my operations manager because they knew we're going to say, okay, what is this? What is that? Like, go through all these steps and you're going to be there for a minute till we figure this out.
Well,
And they
yeah,
didn't
and
want to take the time
well,
to
not only
figure it
that,
out.
the effort.
Yeah.
I know, my son's a junior tech. He out of the blue decided. It's a long story. Never thought he'd be in heating and air, and he ends up in it. But he'll call me up. Sometimes he'll get stuck, and well, check this, check that, and he's like, you know,
Yeah,
and
I know.
it it's it's work. I mean, it's let's say you're in a crawl space or an attic, and you got to go in, you got to go out, you got to go up, you got to go down and back and forth, and get all of your measurements. But I got to tell you that it's just, I had my aha moment. And I may have shared this with you before. All it was a loose belt on an air handler. It was an old system, had a belt driven, a convenience store or something. And I'm checking everything, and I'm getting ready to throw a refrigerant in it because the pressure is low. And I call my boss. His name was Junior, and he's retired now. He still owns that business over there in North Carolina. He was a really good guy. And and he goes exactly what you said. What is this? What is that? What is that? And what is the drop across the coil and everything? And I check the drop. I'm like, every time he tell me, he's calm. Don't call me back until you have all this stuff, all this information. So
Yeah.
the next call, after 2 or 3 of those, I'm like, you know what, Junior, I got something for you. So this time it's not working right. And so I go through, all right, I'm gonna write all this stuff down, and then when I call you, now what are you gonna say?
Right.
The problem
And when you
is,
wrote it down, you figured it out.
yes, that's my point. And that was my aha moment. You just have to take the time and do a full diagnosis. And these are the kind of things that we have to carry over into all parts of life, really, but of our business, if you're going to be effective. Because I think sometimes as we're growing, we want to get to that point where we kind of arrived and we don't have to really put so much of a mental effort into all this stuff. And you feel like, wow, I'm finally comfortable with wiring, or I'm finally comfortable with the refrigeration circuit, and I understand what's going on, or I'm finally comfortable with airflow or psychometrics or what have you. And then you're thrown into the business realm, and then there's these metrics, and you're like, look, I don't understand these numbers things. I'm making this much money, and I sold the job for $10,000 and it was for $4,500 profit. I heard that one the other day, and no, that's gross. That's not profit. And so,
Yeah.
well, you know what I mean. Well, no, it matters because we're having a conversation here, and we want to understand. And you start getting deeper and deeper and deeper, which it's it's a different skill set, and there's really not, other than like you and I, well, kind of what we do. There's really not a crash course that'll prepare you to go from tech to exec, HVAC tech to exec.
No, and you also have to consider, like, even if you're a really good communicator with your customers and stuff, as a technician, you know what to say, you know how to deal with the customer. Like, if you're good and you do
Yeah,
residential, or even light commercial or refrigeration, if you're dealing with a maintenance guy, like, how to deal with those situations. But dealing with other technicians or other installers or sales guys,
yeah.
it's a completely different world. It's not like dealing with customers. So if you could be really great with customers, but you may really struggle with dealing with technicians, even though you are one. You still are in a different frame of mind because you're the owner, and they don't have that same frame of mind. They've got a technician mindset. Like, most people, maintain that technician mindset for a while until it creates enough pain. They either quit at that point or they start to learn. And if they start to learn, they stick with it, and they stay persistent and consistent, and they don't give up. They will get to, they'll eventually get to another level as they learn more knowledge, and once they begin to seek that knowledge. But if they don't, then most of them quit at that point. That's why there's such a huge failure rate. I think HVAC businesses, like, it's like one of the top 3 failing businesses, I believe. I heard that a couple of years ago because restaurants were always like way up
Number
there
one.
because
They were
everybody
number
thinks,
one.
yeah, it was always number one. And I believe that HVAC businesses were a close second, in some article that I read several years ago. But um,
So
because
the
it's
one,
tough, you know, it
the one-
is it's from tech to exec. It's tough. It's a tough transition.
so the statistic that I had read, this is many years ago, but I don't think it's
Mhm.
changed. HVAC, heating and air conditioning, is the second most failed business in the United States, second only to restaurants. That I think it was 7 out of 10 businesses fail within the first 5 years. And
Yeah.
of those that survive, 2/3 of those fail within the next 5 years. Only about 10% make it. And it's not from lack of intelligence. A lot of times it's not from lack of finances or credit. Sometimes it's just a lack of, I don't know, you fill in the blank there.
I'll tell you what it's a lack of. I'll show you. I'll show you in a physical demonstration. Right? So if
Good.
you take your hands, just put them together. Take them apart, put them together. which thumb is which thumb is on top? Either have the right thumb on top or the left thumb on top.
Mine's left.
Left. Okay, well mine's right. So there's a little joke I can do with that, but I'm not going to do it here. But here's what has to happen. You separate your hands, move one hand up
Yeah.
one rung of fingers to where it's completely different, right?
Yep.
How's that feel?
Awkward.
Feels awkward.
Yeah.
Feels it feels unnatural. It
Yes.
feels uncomfortable.
Yes.
Well, and so your natural tendency is like, put your hands back. Man, that
Yeah.
feels
Just go
better.
back to what's comfortable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you want to. So that's the problem.
That is a
Is
great
if
example.
people if people would just stay in that uncomfortable zone for long enough, and I promise you, even with your hands, with this demonstration, if you move them up and you keep it there long enough, it'll eventually become your new normal.
Sure. Sure.
And so if you can just go through the discomfort long enough, then you just have to have faith that it will become a different new normal. And but people resist that discomfort. And that could be real quick, Pete, sorry, but that could be the discomfort of hiring somebody else, of buying another vehicle, of getting a shop, of firing somebody,
Just
of
being a
increasing your
boss and telling
prices.
somebody what to do. Just
Yeah,
being a
I
boss and
mean,
telling somebody what to do. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So it's that uncomfortable thing that we just avoid. We want to pretend that it doesn't exist, and so we just stay in our comfort zone. It's our self-created uh, comfort zone.
I went to Cancun for a week-long seminar back when I was with Linux. I was
Yeah.
a territory manager there for a while. I did some sales training and stuff like that. But anyway, I took a week
What
off.
kind of seminar? Like an HVAC
No,
seminar? Or
no, this was all on mental stuff,
personal
NLP,
development
yeah,
type
personal
stuff?
development. But it was not the guy who taught it. We're still friendly to this day. He was an expert in NLP, but he brought in these other gurus, and we went through sessions. I remember there was this lady that taught the breathing and movement, and this other couple, they talk energy and everything else. But anyway, there was this one session, and he says, "This is what I want you to do." It was early on. He says, "When you get up in the morning, if you brush your teeth with your right hand, I want you to brush them with your left. Brush your teeth with your left hand. Now, when you
Mm-hmm.
go to put your socks and shoes on, if you normally put your both
I
socks
put
on,
like my left one on first.
right?
So
And
instead, I'd put my right one on first, right?
yeah, everything backwards. So, like I remember my grandfather telling me that he met somebody that would put on one sock and then that shoe while the other foot was bare. Then he put on that sock and that shoe. And I was like, that's weird. You put both socks on for, you know, right? So,
Yeah,
so he was teaching this. And then he said, now here's the bonus. He says, so you're walking down the sidewalk or through a hall or something like that. And somebody is walking the opposite direction. Notice when you acknowledge each other, what you do. And so I start paying attention to stuff, and I would literally change who I was in order to leave an impression on this person. And in many cases, in a subservient, submissive, Mr. Polite way that I had learned to put people at ease. I'm 6'5". When I stand really close to people, they get intimidated. So I've learned to kind of soften my position, which
sure.
is kind of a weird thing. But so he was saying, pay attention to all this stuff. And he ultimately came to that same point where what you just did with that excellent example. Thank you, by the way, and in which we fall into these patterns on well, I don't know if I want to say that one or not.
What's that?
Well, this is kind of off color, but in today's world, gaming is crazy popular and everything else. And so is things like pornography and things like this, which, a lot of these young kids are growing up around this. Well, our generation, we didn't have it, and then it came about. And they were talking about how an entire generation, because you use the mouse with your right hand, learn to pleasure themselves with their left hand in order to operate the mouse with the right. I know that's a terrible example, but all of a sudden that became comfortable in the new norm, kind of what you were saying. And
Yeah,
these are these are not really off color. These kind of stuff that you probably ought to talk about, because there are things out there that it is become part of our culture and everything else that we really have to avoid and be careful of. And it's created a lot of social issues. We see a lot of new employees. They don't have the communication skills because they're in that like virtual world. I'm not talking about pornography necessarily, but or they're in the gaming world, and there's this whole disconnect that has happened, and they didn't have the experience that maybe you and I'm older than you are, of, I don't know, beating up your best friend when you were a kid and then being best buddies afterwards, only to have him beat you up the next week, and then you're best friends again, as you're going through through all the difficulties of life and everything else. And we didn't lock the doors back in the day. I mean, we did, but not during the day. And we didn't have an answer machine. We had like just a handful of channels on the TV and stuff like that. But this internet has been really good, but it's also developed a lot of bad habits. And I think one of the most important things that we have to do uh, in terms of growth is not only do all these positive things, it is to be careful of these negative things that once they become ingrained, they've got you. It goes beyond smoking and drinking and shopping and binge eating or emotional eating and all this other stuff. It's created a whole nother set of problems out there. And
yeah. I
sorry to go
mean,
down such a dark path, but this is real. This is what people are dealing with.
yeah, I think well, for one, I mean, like we've all heard, like social media is supposed to be bringing us closer together. Well, it's done way more separation of everybody than
Agree.
it does as far as bringing anybody closer together. Yeah, it's kind of cool to be able to see somebody that you normally wouldn't keep up with or follow. To get to see a couple of things happening in their life here and again. But the reality is everyone experiences something completely different based on the way they're raised. So, to give you like a quick example is there are kids that never receive like any physical touch growing up. They don't get a hug. They don't get told good job. They
Yes.
don't get they don't communicate. They don't communicate or have communication like in any loving or caring or supportive or nurturing way.
No.
And
And it's
some
not
of those
natural.
people wind up becoming your employees.
Well, and they were talking about the suicide rate of all these young kids that, somebody will embarrass them on social media and they'll end their life because their life is social
Yeah,
media.
right.
And I don't want to go into personal details, but I've had ex relationships in my life, and because of the internet, they just won't go away. You know, there's a there's a saying. Well, I'm going off color again. There's I used to make a joke about a saying. Once you've had Pete, your life's complete. Joking to my girlfriend at the time, or my wife at the time. And then, but honestly, I've had people stalk, that I was with 15, 20 years ago, and just weird stuff like
Yeah,
that because of the internet. So all this weird stuff starts to come into. I know that was bad. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Kelley.
that's bad. That's horrible.
Yeah, I know it is. I know it is. But hey, we're just being ourselves today. Okay, a little, or our
Yeah,
former
I'm
self.
just giving you shit. I don't.
I know,
Yeah, it's
as you know, I try these days to be, more morally correct, more Christian like everything else. But I'm old school. I'm ex-military, you know, drinking, fighting. I've done the drugs. I've done, I said,
yeah,
I've done the drugs, and nothing heavy. Chased women, been in places I never should have been, and just bad stuff. And it's a big decision to try to move away from that, but it's still, especially when emotion arises, or you get nostalgic, and you remember back and things like that, you fall into these former patterns. And I'll catch up with old Army buddies. I reconnected with a buddy of mine that I knew when I must have been 19 and he was 20. And so I'm 58 now and he's 50, and we reconnect all these. It was like we were right back then again, and we reconnected
yeah,
everything else. He was what's called a 52 Charlie. In the Army, that's a utilities equipment repairer. That's the MOS, military occupational specialty, which stands for heating and air conditioning, refrigeration, plus most utility packs, which were like these portable hospitals where they would inflate them up and stuff like that. There was turbine generator stuff, and pneumatics. We had these pneumatic, air pressure controls where they would cool these. We'd charge up these bottles with high pressure air, and they would cool the night sights, for night vision and stuff like that. All the military stuff back in the day. But the Army is a great place to start. But anyway, so we reconnected on all that stuff, and but that was because of the internet. So it's
right. I mean,
there's
there's
good.
there's lots of good things about it. I mean, you know, I wouldn't know half the people I know if it weren't for the internet because because of YouTube or just friends that I've met through online. So I mean, it's got lots of positive benefits too.
Yeah.
Um, but the comparison thing is what's really a killer, especially for not only you know technicians but also for business owners. It's really a negative thing
Oh
because
yeah.
it's
Good
hard
point.
not to compare yourself to other people when they're on there bragging all the time about how great and wonderful they are and all this success they're having. So you naturally, and it's like with all social media, it's like it's a highlight reel. And so they're not posting about their wives leaving them. They're not
Have you
posting about having a drug addiction. They're not posting about um whatever. I mean, all the horrible crap that they go through, um you know to try to cope with the stress and the pressure of owning a business. Like you don't you don't hear about the bad stuff most of the time.
Yeah, and that's why
um
it's so important
and
to have
not
your
and not
house.
everybody has it.
No, no,
Some
no,
people
no.
have learned how to deal with it, and those are the people who you should really be following. If I'm an advocate for anybody, like follow the people who have figured some stuff out, how to cope with some of this stuff. um because they're just going to be better mentors. They're going to help, have tools, strategies, techniques to be able to cope with hard times, and the mental game that's such a vital part of your success.
Yeah, I was looking to see if I could find this document. We had this just the other day on, it's called, oh, here it is, Stay Poor. I'm going to read this to you. So here are a few things that if you do, and as you're listening, think to yourself, is that me? Yes or no? And say, for every yes, say one. And then if the next thing I mention, say, okay, I've done that, or I do that, that's two. And let's see what your number is. So let's play this game. This is just, everybody keeps their own score and keeps it to themselves, nothing like that. But
let me get a pen here.
This supports, oh, no, you don't have to write them down. I'll send you this if you want a copy. But my partner over in our mastermind group shared this, and I just thought it was good. So if you are running a business and you're doing these things, and the number of these are a lot, you need to pay attention. If you're thinking about starting your business, fix this first. Because the problem, once you go into business, you start getting money, then now you have more money to screw your life up even worse, right? Like, let's say a gambling habit, right? Now you're really out there. Okay. The top things that you can do to have an unsuccessful business and screw up your life. Number one, if you find yourself saying, I'll start tomorrow. I'll start tomorrow.
I mean, we've all said that at some point. I mean, come on.
Well, if you're habitually doing this, no, I'll start tomorrow. Or how about this?
Yeah.
You read books, you keep consuming, but you don't apply what you're reading.
I'm guilty of that. There's been lots of books I didn't apply anything.
Yeah. So be gentle on yourself on some of these answers, because to your point,
yeah.
I don't think there's one on here we haven't all done, but just being aware.
Right.
Okay. Taking advice from poor people on how to get rich, or from non-HVAC business owner or trainers on how to be a successful HVAC trainer, maybe, right? Right. Taking advantage for people who are poor, but you want to be rich, in whatever category that may be. Picking a spouse that makes you feel guilty about working. I thought that was interesting. Now, me, I find that I want to spend time with my spouse. So, that's my values. Thinking the world isn't fair. Or I'm sorry, thinking the world is fair. That doesn't read right, does it?
Yeah. I mean, I understand. They're saying, like, if you think the world is fair, or you continue to think the world is fair, that's a mistake, because it's not.
That's the one. Okay. Yeah. That's how it's worded. Good catch. Okay. Fail once, quit forever.
Fail is an acronym, just so everyone knows.
Stands for?
It's called First Attempt in Learning.
First attempt in learning.
That's good. You're looking for a pen, aren't you?
Love it. Love it. I need to write that one down. Expect the government to save you. Value the opinion of others over your own opinion. I got to tell you right now, when you're an entrepreneur, you better learn to, stand on your own. What was it? I told you that the other night. Kobe Bryant's favorite line: "Booze don't block shots." Right? I love that expression. Avoiding discomfort. Success comes from staying uncomfortable, by the way, mentally, physically, everything. Make promises, break promises, especially to yourself. That was pretty huge, because once you quit trusting and believing in yourself, it is game over.
Yeah, but the make promises, break promises, where my mind goes to that is some training that I took, and they were talking about agreements. So you don't break your if you break your agreements with your team, with yourself, like, it just crushes your self-esteem.
Yes.
And when we have low self-esteem, we don't have courage. we don't get inspired or motivated to do anything. It keeps us in fear. So,
I love
and,
it.
and
Love it.
when it comes to like our team members, it's easy, or even your kids, like it's easy for you to say, or your significant other, like, oh yeah, we'll go out next Saturday, and you make an agreement, and
Yeah.
then something comes up, and the slightest thing comes up, and you're like, oh well, we're not going to be able to go out. I'm going to have to do this,
Yeah.
and you
It's
just
almost like
broke an
trying to find an
agreement.
excuse. Yeah.
And there's a
Yeah.
lot of agreements that get broke all the time. So try to, like, if you're not sure, so just to finish, like, put a cap on this lesson, is if you're not, don't be so fast to accept agreements. If I say,
Love
Pete,
that.
hey, can you watch my dogs? We're gonna leave town next weekend. Can you watch my dogs? Like, Pete, because
Yeah.
we're friends, he's like, yeah, I'll watch your dogs, even though I don't really want to. Well,
Yeah.
stop saying yes. If you don't
Yeah.
want to, say no, So
Exactly.
anyway,
Exactly. I'm going to do
yeah, keep
one.
going.
I'm going to do
I'll
four
stop
more.
interrupting.
No. I'm going to do four more because I think we ought to save the other half of these for our next call because these are
All
good,
right.
and I think we should go a little slower. Tolerate mediocrity from yourself and others. Yeah, you got to hold people. You got to hold yourself to those higher standards as well as those you surround yourself with. Blaming your circumstances. This was my biggest pet peeve with employees. It was never their fault when something wrong.
Oh
This
yeah.
happened, that happened, everything else. And I used to have meetings with guys. I said, listen, next time I bring this up to you, here's what I want to hear. Pete, I apologize. It won't happen again. Not, well, this happened and that and all this stuff. You got to man up and own it. But anyway, blaming your circumstances.
Yeah, I always heard like, oh, he's an a-hole, or oh, she's a B. I'm not
Yeah.
even gonna pass a whole bunch on here, but like that's what I heard. And it's
Yeah.
not that some of those people aren't that way, but not every time things didn't go your way. That's not why, but it was always just excuse, justify, blame, defend. Yeah.
Exactly. Here's another one. Wait for perfect conditions. Wait for perfect conditions. If I'd have done that to start my business, I never would have started. I started in the middle of I don't know if you were that way, but
In the middle of what? A recession? That's when I started.
I started during a recession. Yeah. And I had just been laid off because I had just changed jobs. Fortunately, I had my license and I was like, man, you know, let's do it. And
I think
I
it's a
could,
great time to start a business, my personally,
well,
because
it wasn't,
everybody's having to pivot, during a recession. They're trying to pivot, and it's a great time for you to gain a little bit of market share. And
well,
but you
I
have to.
think,
Here's what yeah. One quick thing is that people think they can just, oh, I'll just buy some ads or I'll start posting on Facebook, and my phones are going to light up, and that's just not true. It just will not happen that way. You've got to hit the streets. You got to go meet people. You go make it personalized too. It's, if you have a bunch of money, you can,
yeah.
and it can work. But most people who start their business in this industry don't.
And I never really understood this until I lived it. But to answer your question, I went from dreaming about owning my business one day, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. All this, and it was this fantasy in my head. But then when it happened and reality hit, I had a wife. We just had our third child, so she could not work. We had three children at home. I had a car payment. I had, we didn't own yet. We were renting a house, but I had debts and you talk about motivation. You talk about hitting the streets. You talk about getting up and making it happen and figuring out how to. When you operate from a position of necessity, your motivation, it rewires something in your circuitry, and you will get it done. As opposed to, I don't know, you inherit a little bit of money and you kind of go in, you're half-hearted and you go through the money, and now you're, but when you got to do it or else, I heard when some guru was saying that he could have helped his children, but he didn't want to deny his children the benefit of that. And I'm probably butchering the way he was saying it. What were you thinking?
No. There's a whole story about this. I think it's a true story, and it was, and I'll butcher it, but the gist of it is, multi-millionaire, billionaire, whatever, highly successful person, son goes to college, gets out of college, goes to work for, he comes back from college, says, Dad, can you give me a job? Dad gets him a job. 3 months later, he gets fired. He's like, what the hell? I didn't do anything wrong. Like, what's going on? And then it's like, Dad, I need your help again. Dad gets him a job. 6 months later, he gets fired. And happens again. And this time he actually spoke up. He's like, I have been kicking ass in this business for you. I show up early every day. I work late every day. My numbers speak for themselves. Why are you letting me go? He says, well, your dad told me I had to fire you after 6 months. And so he calls his dad, and his dad is like, oh, he's like, how dare you? I've worked so hard to get, and the dad says something like, yeah, you're ready. Now you're ready. Now you can actually go get a real job and get it on your own.
What an awesome story.
Worked for it and you fought for it. So yeah,
I love that. I love that. Oh man,
I wish I could. I'd have to hear it a couple more times to tell it like really fluent, but you get the gist.
It worked.
Still good.
It worked. I didn't see it coming. I didn't see that was good. That was good.
Yeah.
Last two. Do what everybody else is doing. Do what everybody else is doing. I love that one. When you take out there and you chart a new path, and this is what entrepreneurship is, right? That entrepreneur and intrapreneur. Intrapreneur is following the same old proven system. Entrepreneur, we're charting new paths. We're figuring out something new. We're taking advantage of a new opportunity in the market. We're creating our own blue ocean within the heating and air conditioning industry that's never existed before, right? Stuff like that. Last one. You got a comment? Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, this is where I depart on the whole marketing thing. Like, I'm all for, let's go back to the basics on marketing: direct mail, long sales letters, and I'm telling you that will never, ever, ever go away. It will always, 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 always be effective. But everybody's chasing the newest, fanciest crap out there that costs 1,800 times more than just putting a letter in an envelope and sending it to a neighborhood that you want to do work in. And so it drives me insane. And I get it. I'm not saying that there's not a place for it at all. I'm just saying stop ignoring that part of it. Marketing is all, for one, it's all a guess. It's a wild ass guess. It's a wag. You don't know if any marketing works until you test it, period. The best marketers on earth will tell you the same thing. You still have to test it. You may think that it's going to be a grand slam, but you do not know until you test it. So it's all about just testing. It's like first attempt in learning. It didn't fail. You just try the next thing, and you try the next thing until you find what works, and then it's repeatable at that point.
Yeah, and it's interesting to compare notes with you, because while we are so in sync in concept, the way that I would communicate that is focused on a different area of marketing. So if in Pete's definition of marketing would be things that influence prospects or current customers to buy from you, to continue forward with you. Advertising would be a subset of that. Advertising would be like doing the direct mail or doing, I don't know, Google ads, Facebook ad, whatever. But marketing encompasses so much more. And it's a bit like, I always compare relationships because, we guys, when we were single and we're trying to impress a girl, we would market, we would dress nice, we would work out, have the physique. This is all marketing, right? Be well, display confidence, communicate well, things like this.
Be polite. Yeah.
So for me, the core marketing within your business is most powerful at that internal level. And it's at the point when you're in their home and you're interacting with them and you're truly providing your best, both technically and personally, in such a way. And if your systems support this, it makes it easier on your tech so that you're not depending on some personality or charisma that they may or may not have, but on a system that your customers go, wow, this, and that's where your referrals come from. Right. Yeah. That's really important when times get tough. So
it's always, for any amount of success, it's just important. And I know a couple of businesses that really do a really good job at that. And, they have to spend literally nothing on like advertising.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, the business is a perpetual referral machine because they do such a good, they portray themselves so well to their customers. So I will agree with that for sure. But you get what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, everybody thinks, oh, I need more customers. First of all, you may not need more customers.
I agree.
You may need to just take better care of the ones you currently have.
Yes.
And when you start doing that, more customers will show up. So stop thinking that you got to go spend a bunch of money to go get a bunch more customers. Because I'm telling you right now, you could go do a $20,000 campaign, and do like a direct mail, a radio ad, and a TV ad, and maybe some streaming or a billboard or something like that. And you may not receive a single phone call from any of that. You might hear a lot of, oh, I heard your commercial. That was great. Well, oh, I heard your commercial. Sounds good for the ego, but it doesn't put money in your bank account. So you probably don't need more customers, unless, I'm not saying that not everybody is there, but the majority of people who are trying to grow their businesses that are struggling, it's not advertising that you need.
And I think that you, me, everybody, all of us have done this. It's a form of self-delusion. It's a form of not really understanding. We literally think we need better advertising. We need more leads.
Totally. I did all the time. Yeah.
We literally think that this take better care of your customers. Your answer is, well, I already do. And when you start to dive in and see how other people are doing it, you start to, the lights come on, you go, you can do that? That works that way, right? And so all of a sudden, the whole thing shifts. If you, on the front end of your business, when you're in customer acquisition mode, are advertising, you get used to that and you don't adjust and move towards a business model of what Kelley just so well described, to where you don't even hardly need any. It's a gradual tapering of external marketing, and it's a gradual increase of internal marketing. And so these people are experts in maintaining that communication with the people that depend on them for the heating and air, things like this. So
yeah, and it's the people who are in your business. It's the way that they treat people, and the way that you treat your whole culture interacts. It's all felt by the customer. And I've been through, I had times where we had a pretty good culture going and things were working. And I had times where we didn't. I've experienced all angles, ups and downs of all of it.
And that's huge right there, because when you're going from you being the technician, you being the comfort advisor, and then all of a sudden you're handing this off to this person, there's a lot of assumption that goes into that other person. Even when you hire a technician, you're assuming that they approach a service call the way that you do, and they're checking all these things. Oh, I checked it, it's good. When in reality, I think we all could use some training to fill in those gaps. But when you
And if you get lucky enough to have an actual somebody with experience too, you tend
yeah,
to like let them do their own thing.
yeah, just turn them, well, out of sight, out of mind, if I don't see them, there's no problem. That's wrong, because I mean, so many, they bring in this baggage and they just negatively affect the culture. But bank on this. Once you transition into those employees, count on it. All of them smiling to you, coming to you, hey boss, supporting you. And the moment they walk out that door, they don't actually feel that, not to that level. They may be supporting you and everything else, but on the inside, I wish he'd pay a little bit more. I wish he'd give me a little bit more credit, because, that was my idea, or I wish the compensation was a little bit fair, or I wish, my family time was considered a little bit more too, or I wish that, or, oh gosh, now he went to that seminar and here we go again with another one of these things, they don't buy in. So that transition is another one. We got time for one more. Okay. So,
Yeah.
last one, avoid working on what matters most. Do busy work instead.
Hey, that sounds like a book title right there. Busyness to Business by Kelley McKay. Be sure to check that out on Amazon.
That was a big yes for me, because I used to love being busy, but I'd put off that big ugly frog like we talked about on a prior call. And so guys, if you're out there just doing busy, you're out there chasing that work and everything else, you're working in that business, you're not working on that business. I had a conversation. There's a guy coach right now. He missed our session again. Love the guy. He's a great guy. He took on a contract. It was way too big. I told him don't do it. All that money, and now he doesn't have time to. Everything kind of slows down. So this is how you get stuck at a level, guys. You get stuck at that 1-man, 2-man level because you're not doing that internal work that you have to do to get you to that next level. So that, Kelley McKay might be the best in every aspect of his business, but he's not scalable. His knowledge is, if you get it externally and get it in, you get employees to follow what he's developed up here, but you're not scalable. You can't duplicate, you can't clone yourself and go run calls. You got to understand that. So you have to, this is why we put these processes and stuff together, customized for you, right? And so this is how you bring in the right people. Like what you were saying, Kelley, is about, I think it was you, it was talking about personality versus skill set or experience and everything else. And build, obviously they have to have the core competencies, but in building on that, and because there's going to be turnover, there's going to be a learning curve, experience curve, and there's going to be attrition with customers. Life happens. So
yeah, you can't just because you own a business doesn't mean life's going to stop. That's for sure. Life will continue to happen in your life and in your employee's life, and it makes it rough sometimes, and it makes it not the best of, like, that's why the faster you can grow and add people to help you expand your business, the better. Because if it's just one, if you only have 1 or 2 people and those 1 or 2 people leave, then what? Then it's back to you again. And that's that a lot of times people just feel so defeated when stuff like that happens that they literally just, that's it. They give up at that point. And so that's not
if it don't work, quits.
Anybody to go through. So you have to be prepared. There's also, a thing of, like, I just read this the other day, and it's like yellow alerts. Like, we want to pretend that these yellow alerts are not happening. So your dispatcher says, oh, I met this guy in the Bahamas and he's so cute. And I just can't wait. And right. Well, then a month later, she says, I just don't like Kansas weather. It's always cold here. I wish I lived in the Bahamas. Oh, we're getting along so good. Like, and then a month later, she comes in and gives you your 2-week notice, and you're like, what? All of a sudden you're leaving? No, you've been ignoring the yellow alerts. And so they're always happening in your business. I ignored hundreds of them. I'm guilty. We're all guilty. But the thing is, now that you become aware, it's time to start paying attention. And
Yeah.
this goes with our personal lives. It goes with what's happening with our bodies. It goes with what's happening with how we feel. It goes with what's happening with how we think. It goes with everything. Once you become aware, then you need to do something about it. If it's something that you're very uncomfortable with or you're not happy with, you have to take action.
Yeah. And so this goes back to the blaming the circumstances, blaming other people. So when somebody quits you, now they're your enemy because they quit. Guys, people come, they go, listen, they leave you, start their own business, stuff happens, right? Assume the accountability yourself, take full responsibility for everything that happens with that balance of, that which I can control, I'll try to control that which I can't. I accept, I influence where I can, but that's just part of life. And so, but assume, stepping up and assuming responsibility of your organization and not being the victim. We call them the Vicky. Don't let them call you Vicky. Be, step up and own it. Be in charge of yourself.
It's literally the number one thing that changed everything in my life is the formula E plus R equals O. I'm going to be repeating that over and over again because it's that important. Everybody needs to hear it. There's events are always happening in our lives. And then how you respond to those events is going to equal your outcome. You have a choice on how you respond to it. You can blow up and get pissed off and blame the weather or the traffic or the economy or the president or the whatever. You can blame all these things, or you can change your response. And so it's like if 2 plus 2 equals 4, and all of a sudden I become discontent with 4 and I want 7. Well, I've got to replace one of those 2s. I can't just keep doing 2 over and over again. The 2 is the first 2, it's static, it's going to stay there. The second 2 is the one that I can change. But if I want 7, I can't keep doing 2. I got to change that to a 5, which means something in my organization, in my life, in my world has to change. If I want 7, that's good, isn't it?
Okay, so guys, we have come to the end of our hour here. Kelley, thank you so much. We're going to be doing this regularly. Watch the playlist. Don't know if we're going to roll this put it over on podcast yet. I don't think we have to if we do it over on our.
I don't think so.
Facebook, yeah. And again, there's no visuals here, so you just listen to this going down the road. But listen, guys, when you're out there and you're having those tough jobs and you're brazing and you burn yourself, you just remember, at least you didn't burn your face. Pete Ramsey here for Kelley McKay. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
See you guys.